What's up, good people? Welcome into the emergency pod on the DLLS Cowboys podcast. Your new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, has been introduced. A lot of people have gotten a chance to hear him speak in his cowboy garbs. And we're going to go ahead and get our first fresh reaction from that press conference. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the Cowboy DLLS podcast. Become a diehard member. The QR code is right there in the bottom left-hand side, my left side, your right side of the screen. And as always, we have boots on the ground. Wow. The best beat writer in the game, Clarence Hill, was at the Star asking questions. And Clarence, I'm going to come right to you and just give me your first impressions of seeing, hearing, and being around in the room with Christian Parker.
Young and impressive. With confidence. Again, you look at him, he said, I'm ready. Open the press conference, said, I'm ready. And he did not blink to any question. The Cowboys, if you listen, they took him through the ringer with the interviews from everything that they brought him in. And he said he wasn't scared. He was prepared. He was not daunted by anything. And you can see why he was so impressive in interviews. With how he handled us and how he took all our questions without any blink. He's a confident young man and very prepared. Very prepared. You can see he's prepared. And he's ready to go to be the Cowboys defense coordinator. But again, just an impressive young man and not overwhelmed by the process, not overwhelmed by the job, not overwhelmed by us, not overwhelmed by the Star. This man said he's ready. Started HBCU. He got it out the dirt. I asked that question for you, Law. He got it out the dirt. He started at HBCU and said that things he learned starting at HBCU helped prepare him because we're talking about a meteoric rise.
Right.
From where he started as a young coach at 21 to be a defense coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys at NFL at 34.
Excuse me for not introducing. We got Clarence Hill at the Star, boots on the ground. We got our boy representing the Black History Month edition, the BEDT edition of the DLLS Cowboys podcast. Law Nation is in the building. I am your boy Jesse Holley. But Law, I'll come to you. Give me your first impressions with now hearing Christian Parker in a Cowboys uniform, your new defensive coordinator.
Most certainly, he sound very intellectual, and he articulated himself very well. I would say one of my favorite movies, I was telling you before we went live, is Enemy of the State, and it was Gene Hackman. He was inside the elevator with Will Smith, and he said, either you incredibly smart or you incredibly stupid. And we know for sure that we'll end up being incredibly smart in that scene. So I'm looking at it the same way. CP, Christian Parker, the way he articulated himself, and what gives him more and more credibility is the same thing that Schottenheimer said. It was the other folks that really brought light to what Christian Parker, meaning that his resume and his name speaking for himself from someone else, that speaks volumes. And I can't wait to see it tangibly with my eyes this offseason.
Yeah, one of the things I took away from, I tweeted this out within the first 7 to 8 minutes of listening to Christian Parker speak, I was impressed. And a lot of us have that Cowboys PTSD where people get to the podium and they begin to talk that talk, right? And sometimes it feels like, they get up on that podium and they start talking that pimp talk, right? And they start telling us, get out there on the stroll and make this money for us. And we start buying the words of what they're saying. But I could, I've been in enough rooms around enough people. I've heard enough slick talker. You can't out slick talk a slick talker. But Clarence's point, to your point, he sounded very confident, very polished. For a dude who's only 34 years old, he sounds well beyond his years. He sounds like a guy who's been in a game, 15 years at this thing, and not like, Clarence said, a meteoric rise going from HBCU to now being the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, one of the largest and most recognizable franchise in all of sports in just 7 short years. He sounds very, very, very intelligent. And I was impressed that he had not just a fluff answer, but a very detailed, a very convincing, a very well thought out process answer for just about every question that anyone was able to ask him. And, he came out the gate first and, they asked him, what kind of defense will you be bringing to the Cowboys? And he said, hey, we're going to run a 3-4. What? We're going to have some 4-3 spacing. And at times we'll even go to a 5-2. And he was very clear when he talked about our defensive backs. I'm going to play to their strengths. If they're good man, we're going to play more man. If we're better in zone and I discipline in zone, we'll probably play more zone. But, will be multiple is the term that he used in that. Clarence, you had a chance to do the walk-off with him after he got off the stage. Was there any more tidbits and details that you got from that on the walk-off?
No, I was just, because I asked him about the 3-4 and who's going to be the nose, is it going to be, Kenneth Clark is going to be, because, which I talked about, we talked about it, Jeff, you can see inside linebackers, outside linebackers, coach, it's going to be a 3-4 defense. That's what he's going to run. And again, you look at those defensive tackles, somebody got to play nose, somebody got to play end and base. And you look at those fits and you see which, he said, we're going to figure all that out. But, again, he brought up, you got the wrong 1911. I said, man, I know you're a Kappa, man. Stop all that, man. I'm 84. I know you're a Kappa. I've done my research on you, young man. But I'm 84. But no, he again did not blink. And he talked to somebody, asked him about, being, if he was nervous. He said, I wasn't nervous. I was prepared. And he said, and he talked in the press conferences, did you know you got the job? And he said, yeah, I felt good about my interview. I didn't leave here questioning anything with no regrets, because he knew he hit it out the park, early on. And Shotty talked about it. More they talked to him, the more they wanted to know, because that's how impressive he was with the interview. And they put him, they made him run a team meeting, a mock team meeting and different things like that. And he did not blink. I mean, they put him through the ringer. There's no question about that. From the virtual interview to the in-person interview, they put him through it. He was the last person interviewed, and they didn't need to see no more.
Law, my question for you is, I know that your Cowboy love is through and through, but has your needle moved? I think a lot of people were excited about the process of the hire, now having the hire, and now being able to hear from him. Has that needle for you moved, ever so slightly? Has it been a jump? Has it been, how does now hearing from him move that needle for you and your excitement and your hopium about what this team can be defensively going forward?
Yeah, I try to line up the hopium as much as possible, and Clarence know all about it, right? He know I'm going to line up the hopium, but in this fashion, I'm going to give him the same manner that I gave Schottenheimer. Last season, I had him at a 5.5 throughout the entire season, from a 10, it being the highest. And Schottenheimer got all the way up to a 7.5. So I'm looking at Christian Parker. I want to give him a 5.5 out of 10, and then we'll go from there. I really want to see how he engages the guys in the offseason. One of the things that Schottenheimer said, even in his presser, is that the mock, I believe, coaching staff meeting was where he scored the lowest at. So now I'm looking at it, and I'm sitting there saying, hey, I need to see some results, though.
Hey, Clarence, you were in the building. Were there any current Cowboy defensive players? They'll sit in the back sometimes when they're doing these press conferences and, bringing in new coaches. Did you happen to pan the room and see any current players defensively, specifically, that was at the press conference?
Well, let's talk about that. To me, it wasn't that big of a deal, but Jerry and Steven weren't there. And I know I was talking to James, was asking, is it significant that Jerry and Steven aren't there? And are they trying to make this about Shotty and give Shotty and his coaching style a shine? Or what did that say? And I never expected Jerry and Steven to be there. I mean, when they sent out the email, it was just going to be Shotty and Coach P. And as Tad said, that even last year when they brought in Eberflus, Jerry and Steven went there for the defensive coordinator hire. But it does. There's just an example. If you want to just not go by what they say, but go by the actions, this is another example of the change that we're seeing, is that we're diminishing, making it about Shotty. And Shotty was in charge of the process, and we're gonna let Shotty announce his young coach. And again, a guy who's never done it before. There's one thing, when it's Eberflus, one thing with Zimmer, with former head coach who got a track record. We're talking about a young guy. Then we need Jerry to tell the world, in front of the world, I love this guy too. And they let Shotty handle it. But as far as players, no, there were no players here. It was only media, and again, it just wasn't a forum for that. But Shotty made a point to say that players have stopped by, players have showed up, players have made a point to come to the building to meet him. He talked about that the brewing excitement among players for Christian Parker, and so it's palpable. It's palpable throughout the building, throughout the staff, throughout the ownership, throughout the players that they're excited. And we've talked about it. I mean, Law and I went to dinner with Hooker the other day, and he's talked to some other players. We talked to other players. They're very excited about the addition of Christian Parker.
Most certainly.
Yeah, I mean, again, listening to the press conference, I get it. Like, I get the excitement, because, I mean, the press conference was, 50-something minutes or whatever it was, and immediately you felt good about it. Now, I am still reserving the right to change my thought process as I see the offseason progress, right? Well, what players are they bringing in, how things are looking in OTAs and minicamp. The one thing that he said, and I think this is going to be a big thing going forward with, because you hear this a lot. You hear this a lot when you hear coaches talk about, especially defensively, of we're going to be multiple, right? And in short word is basically we're going to do a multitude of things. Well, last year you heard Eberflus talk about doing things multiple. You heard Shotty talk about us being multiple. And along with being multiple, it takes a locked-in group that needs to be multiple, right? It takes a locked-in group to be able to go, like he said, hey, we're going to be a 3-4 base, but then we're going to have some 4-3 spacing. And then at times we're going to have a 5-2 look out there as well. So you're talking about from down to down, from quarter to quarter, from series to series, that things can be changing and moving and shifting. And there's going to need to be the level of players, the competency from the players to be able to pick that up fast, because you got to hit the ground running with this new defensive coordinator. Again, the Cowboys are going to have a very difficult schedule this year, and the way this league is continuously improving, people are going to try to test Christian Parker and his ability to call plays. And it's one thing that he said that I can't wait to really figure out is when someone asks him about, are you a field guy or booth guy? Right? Are you going to be down on the field in the action? Or are you going to be up in the booth and keeping more of a calm, cool demeanor? So, a lot of those things we'll be able to decipher and see over the next couple of months. But I got to say, just thoroughly impressed by Christian Parker so far. He passed test 1 for me. The initial conversation, he passed that.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what you giving him, Dan?
For today?
Yeah, for today. Or
today was a strong 8. Today was a strong 8. Today was a very strong 8. He looks like a very even-keeled person, right? He didn't come in there. He didn't give you humdrum, just boring energy, and he didn't give you that shoddy, over the top, like Clarence off of 5-hour energies. He gave you that kind of really like, hey, he gave you, I belong in this seat. I'm confident in here. No matter my age, no matter what I look like, any of that where I came from, I'm supposed to be right where I'm at. And so for me, it was a strong 8 for me on the introductory press conference.
Yeah, you're right about that. He was an 8. Studying the vibes. He was trying to make jokes and talk about Jerry's documentary. He's a serious coach. I mean, he was a serious one. With Shotty, you said Shotty be over the top a little bit sometimes. Trying to show he's cool. This dude is the epitome of just calm, cool, and collected. And so he was very impressive in how he handled himself. I asked him, did he get insurance? Did you get the guarantees?
Yeah,
we're going to prove his roster. And basically he said, we need players. Yes, I like the guys we got, but we need players.
All right, man, that's it for us today. Be sure to like and follow. We will be back tomorrow at our regular schedule, programming, time, and place. Law will be in the building. Clarence Hill will be there. Your boy Holley will be there. And we will have much more time to break down what we thought about Christian Parker's introductory conversation and his introductory podcast. For Clarence Hill, for Law Nation Sports, I am Jesse Holley. Remember to like and follow. This is the DLS Cowboys podcast. And as Jeff would always say, you never know what anyone's going through, so be kind to everybody. As I always say, eliminate the contingencies.